חג שמח, מועדים לשמחה, good מועד, happy Sukkot to everyone. Book of Kohelet, or in Greek, Latin, Ecclesiastes, is the book that we read during the Shabbat Chol HaMoed, the Shabbat of intermediary days of Sukkot. How come? Especially I heard from several people that sounds very sad and depressing book. So what I would like to share with you is just the opposite. That is one of the most uplifting book and very appropriate to read it during Sukkot. The key words that play throughout the scroll of Kohelet, which is also one of the King Solomon, the builder of the temple's name, it's the word Hevel, Hey Bet Lamed. Incorrectly, in many English translation of the word, you see a word like meaningless, brutal, all kind of a vanity, all kind of incorrect translation of the word Hevel. The late Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sacks of England, in a Korean edition, translated properly, meaning the word Hevel is fleeting breath. I assume you know that many other faith groups, Buddhism, Hinduism, using that word of soul, teach you how to breathe properly. And especially in this era of pandemic crisis, people appreciate the idea of breathing and the breath, the value of life. So here Kohelet, King Solomon, tells us, when before our God, our Maker, we ask for another year of life, we pass the judgment of Day of Judgment and Day of Atonement, Yom Kippurim. Now on Sukkot, we should remember the transient of life, that nothing is permanent. And the beauty of that, it's a reminder that what is really the goal of our lives, why we are here. We are doing it on Sukkot because Sukkot is an expression of the transient, of the temporary lives that we live. He attests to that. As the wealthy man, as the king of Israel, King Solomon said, I build buildings. You see nowadays people building the highest sky building. People are fighting for power. People really going out of their way in energy for acquisitions, for acquiring wealth. People writing books, people doing artwork, accumulate wealth. Oh, I'm worried about my great-grandchildren, grandchildren, and more. He said, it's fleeting breath. In a second, everything can be history. For a number of years, reading the book of Kohelet, I come to conclusion that it's a book of psychology, a book that analyzes human behavior. What motivates people to behave in a certain way? Many people is the fantasy of immortality, of feeling that I can control the current situation and the future situations for my grave. People think that I can defeat death. Here, King Solomon said, from everything can be nothing. The Rambam tells us a person should always remember, today, it may be the very last day of my life. Should I focus so much on this aggravation, this seeking of controlling other people, manipulating people, power, money? writing books. Who knows if other people will care to read them? Leaving so much wealth to other people, even your own kids. Who assure you that your children are going to follow that footsteps and do things that you are happy? It may be that they just turn around in a total opposite direction, or being a spendthrift that lose all the wealth they work so hard for nothing. So the idea of focusing on heaven, of fleeting breath, is the core point in the book of Kohelet. Hevel, where is Hevel? The first murderer in the Bible. Hevel, fleeting breath. Cain, brother of Hevel, murdered him. Kaniti, they named him Cain Kaniti, acquisition. The prototype, the model of this biblical text is so beautiful. It's the reminder of what's really important in life. A brother kill his brother over money, over power, over acquisitions, over controlling. Many scholars, many world-renowned psychologists, from the students of Sigmund Freud to many other psychologists, tells us that so many people are so obsessed with their anxiety, with their need, not just a current power, but to make sure that they can control their world in their imagination, even they are physically no longer among the living. Here, King Solomon said, you know what? I did it. I built palaces, I did so much. And now, when I'm in the other part of my life, it's really a fleeting breath. And he concluded by saying, Sof davar, hakol nishma. The end of the day, the end of the mindset and thinking, a person should understand that only if you take the Almighty God in your life and put the feeling of presence of God all the times, feeling I'm closing my eyes now, and is God really happy of what I'm doing? That's the idea of awe of God, fear, feeling God presence in my life. God have you in the palm of his hand all the time. Follow his mitzvot, which is good for you, good for your future. Involved in repairing the broken world, bringing the world to be a better place to live. Then you feel the simcha, the joy. As we said earlier, it's just wonderful lesson for life. The word simcha, many times misconstrued by people. Ashrei is happiness, meushar. Simcha, it's a joy, the joy of life. Just as an example, take the Israelis. With all the crises, can be missiles, can be accident, can be pandemic, can be homicides, and so many others. Yet, always, you see them with joyous, with simcha, dancing on the wedding, have this spirit of joy no matter what. Isn't that a paragon of excellence, a good example of how we should adapt the attitude of life from this beauty of Kohelet. The word Simcha 17 times appear in the book of Kohelet. More than the entire 5 books of Moses. Bereshit 1, Shmot 1, Leviticus Vayikra 1, the Midbar 1, the Devarim 12 times, altogether 16 times. 17 times. Solomon wants us to know that we have the capability to be besimcha, to be in a state of joy. How can we do that? Especially on Sukkot, when we value the life as a sukkah. After Yom Kippur, after we attend and beseech God for another year of life, the Almighty come back and said, okay, I'm granting you another good year, another year of your life. Now what you're going to do with that? It's a reminder from the 2nd book of Samuel, when the prophet Nathan came on behalf of King David and asked, the king wants to build a big palace for God. And in our language, God answered, I was dwelling in a tabernacle, in a Sukkot. Did I ever ask for a fancy building? Which leads us to value life as a Sukkot. Some people think it's expression of insecurity. We said, based on the Kohelet, the Sukkot is the security. The same way as it was a pillar of cloud, a pillar of glory in an ancient biblical time when our people left Egypt with unknown situation, crossed the miraculously the sea, 40 years in the desert, and it was a pillar that protects them. Then they have this Sukkot, something that we build to feel the transient, the impermanent way of life, which is a combination of well-known Talmudic sages' view. The 2 great rabbis, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Eliezer, that tell us it's the combination of the two. If you feel the presence of God, you feel this life of a sukkah, it's a protection because God is watch over you. God have you in the palm of in His hands. Just remember Hevel Avalim. Close your eyes and think, if you have the presence of God, is God happy with what I'm doing? Remember what is Hevel, what is a fleeting breath, which so many people during the pandemic now value, the neshima, the neshama, the value of breathing. The same way we should evaluate the life. And therefore, if we take the gift of life, the gift of joy, the gift of really beauty of the world, and try to make it a better place to live, then following God's commandment, have the awe and fear of God, and building a better world, that's lead us to a very happy year. I wish you, from the bottom of my heart, a wonderful Sukkot festival. And please, when you study and read Kohelet, make sure to see the beauty and the positive of life, which hopefully lead us to a real ashrei, real happiness. Chag Sameach.